We all heard about the popular thing about how to master anything that you need 10,000 hours. And that number is has become like popular with any kind of things with like books and all that stuff. But the issue is that that number 10,000 hours is not only misleading but also quite false. The reality of when you learn something depends so much on other context besides specific amount of hours that it's simply impossible to know that you need 10,000 hours to learn. But we know, for example, how much it takes for you to become competent or relatively good at something. There was a TED Talk I watched recently, and the guy was talking about the exact same myth of like 10,000 hours and where it came from, like the history of it, etc. And how reality is way more different to that number. Although, of course, it takes up to 10,000 hours to master, so to become prolific at something. But to become good at it, you don't need nowhere near 10,000 hours. In fact, through his own research, he found that it only takes 20 hours to become pretty good at anything that you want to be good at. And 20 hours, to contextualize, is such a small amount of time in the grand scheme of things, right? You can say that in 20 hours in a single day, if you spend something, you might become actually pretty good at something, right? But nobody's doing that, and you're not going to do that either. It's simply illogical to spend 20 hours in a single day of doing something with lack of sleep, etc. But what you can do instead is that you can just take time every single day and just accumulate 20 hours within a month. And the way you accumulate 20 hours in a month is roughly 40 to 45 minutes, every single day for an entire month. And you accumulate your 20 hours like that. 40 to 45 minutes is such an inconsequential amount of work, time, that you think you're gonna get anything barely done. And it does seem that way because we're being conditioned by this hustle culture and grind culture, that a bit of grind slop, you could say, that you need to spend so much hours a day that you can be unrecognizable and that you need to be good at something as soon as possible. That is a great marketing strategy to sell your courses to people, but reality is a bit different, that not everybody has that much time or that much effort capacity in order to actually dedicate as many hours in a day to what is at the level of a hobby, really, that can later turn into some kind of profitable thing. Then people think it's a bit overestimated. Excuse me. But 40 minutes a day to dedicate something that amount of time for an entire month, you're gonna become pretty good at it. You can select any kind of thing that you want. It can be from coding to learning a language to running, etc. Whatever it is, you can just do 40 minutes of that every day for an entire month, and you're gonna be pretty efficient and pretty good at it. What are the things that I recommend you spend your 40 minutes on? These are subjective, obviously, because that's something that I spend my time on doing, obviously, and I find a lot of enjoyment, and I see a lot of ROI into it as well, because they do pay off in the long term. One thing I'm learning is coding. I've been learning coding for up to a year now, actually. It's something that I enjoy. It's kind of a fun thing to do. You're just at the computer all day, solving problems, building programs, etc. I'm specifically using Python though, but it's such a fun thing to do. It's a fun learning process for me, and the process of learning itself is pretty nice. But the long-term investment in learning to code is, well, the fact that you can be pretty proficient at making programs, and in an ever digitalizing world, knowing how to code is like the number one skill you'll use, even in the age of AI with vibe coding and stuff. Still, knowing how to code by your hands, if you're asked by an employer or you needed to double check the actual code that AI wrote, is a superpower you can have that not a lot of people have today, and will forget more and more as the AI becomes more normal part of coding ecosystem. Let's just say that, although it already is in a way. But I enjoy coding. because it gives me the ability to problem solve, expand my critical thinking capacity, and just generally create something while doing that. And I love those kind of challenges as well. Second thing is learning a language. Language is the more you grow older, the more it seems like it's more difficult to learn a language. And I totally understand that, because when you're young, there's a thing where young people, like children in general as well, learn languages super quickly because the brain is growing and they absorb information quicker and easier. That was certainly the case for me. By the age of 5, I was already speaking about 3 languages, and also 2 more aside from my native one. And that was a big thing. But the thing is, it's already normal nowadays, right? With children being exposed to a lot of content on the internet, especially with slop content on on TikTok and Instagram, right? They learn the language. They learn the languages of any kind if you give them to it. But dedicating 40 minutes to a language is literally not a lot of time in the grand scheme of things. You won't be able to speak fluently in the 40 minutes by any means. But the thing is, when you accumulate that 20 hours in a language, you can actually kind of start to understand stuff in a language. You start to speak it a little bit, maybe have a small 1-sentence conversation with somebody. And now that gives you more and more confidence to speak that language more and more and more confidently. And so the biggest return on investment for that language, when you learn a language in general, is that not only are you able to communicate with a lot of people in their native language, that is a sign of respect, and generally, it brings a more positive attitude towards you. Because a lot of people, because it's an English speaking world, right, where everybody speaks English, YouTube is English, etc., a lot more people are exposed to English than, let's say, Chinese or some other language. A lot of people don't expect internationally that you're going to speak their language natively, or at all for that matter. And so when you learn the language and you go to the country where that language originates from, or where they speak the language, there's a lot of shock and surprise from them, and a lot of respect and warmth towards you, because it's an unexpected thing for a foreigner to do. But additionally, the return on investment is that you have more capacity to move around, obviously, right? The more language you unlock, the more you're able to travel to a lot of places and care for yourself independently. But also, if you're doing business or just kind of any kind of job, you can land a job or build a business in the country where they speak the language. Maybe the English isn't popular there. And so within you knowing the language, it's much easier to, you have an easier access to everything that associates with building a business or having a job than with people that don't speak the language itself. It's a massive improvement, and also a flex, because you can speak more languages, you can understand things more. So it's just a better return on investment, in my opinion. Number 3, what I would say is definitely learning some kind of hands-on skill, right? Coding can be a hands-on skill for sure, because coding can be beyond building a software. You can be just fixing a program or just doing anything. But I think hands-on skill can also be a very physical thing that you can be doing, like maybe plumbing or fixing stuff, gadgets, technology, building stuff, because it's going to be useful irrespective of where you are in today. Right? You can be at a farm, you can be in your home in the city. There are some skills, universal, the hands-on skills that you need to learn, like fixing stuff or repairing stuff or even making stuff, that will be super useful irrespective of where you are. It can be in a rural place or city places, again, as I said. And with that comes kind of a lot of freedom and self-dependency, and you save a lot of money without needing to hire an engineer or something, because you can just do it yourself, right? Taking a hands-on skill for sure is a big one, even though as a man, of course, you also should kind of know those stuff as well. But I'm also kind of hypocritical because I have very much lack of hands-on skills. Not a lot of hands-on skills, but I do know how to cook, so that's a hands-on skill in itself, a very important one at that. A lot of men cannot cook, and you should learn how to cook a delicious food, right? When you're gonna have friends over or family over and stuff, and that you can give them genuine good food made with your own hands, is a completely different energy. I personally very enjoy. There's plenty of stuff that you could sink your 20 hours into. I can put a list on the screen of exactly what you like to do, and you select from one of those. And yeah, it's simply speaking, you don't need 10,000 hours to really like become competent at anything. 20 hours is completely enough. And in that 20 hours, you can build a foundation and confidence for you to then grow that skill even more, then become more proficient. And with that, you may even get proficiency and like expertise at something in less than 10,000 hours, right? Some people learn faster, some people learn slower. Sometimes it's a natural given. It's not, it's, both are valid, right? Everybody has their pace as to how fast they learn a skill or anything that there is, right? And I just want to touch upon that because sometimes it can be a lot of frustration coming from people when they tell them that it's 10,000 hours, and that number is very misleading. And there's truth to that. Doing 10,000 hours of anything can get you really good at that, right? Even without theoretical knowledge or academic knowledge of that stuff. That is totally understandable. But that also creates a very huge barrier of entry to a lot of things, or literally everything, for people that maybe don't have the contextualization of what that 10,000 hours consists of, which is the first 20 hours being probably the most important hours of that 10,000 hours. And once you get over that 20-hour hurdle, then things kind of just flow a bit easier because you're actually pretty good at that thing. Right? So contextualizing the 10,000 hours in that aspect is incredibly important. The more you get over that 20-hour hurdle, it's easier. Then maybe the next 20 hours as well can be also pretty big growing, but there's a scale at which the speed at which the learning process slows down is obviously there. You plateau at a certain level, and that's why you need more and more hours actually to become good at it, because the changes after a certain amount of time, the improvement after a certain amount of time is very incremental, and it kind of plateaus. So that's where all the 10,000 hours really come from, right? More than anything. But you can become 80% proficient at something in like just, let's say, 1,000 to 2,000 hours. And then those incremental changes is what takes up that 10,000 hours realistically. So that's, if you do 40 minutes of something every day for a year, that's going to be a massive improvement of any kind, right? So that's all it takes. 40 minutes is nothing. 45 minutes is nothing. You can probably do more. And one tip is that we always kind of work towards something when we stop when we are truly satisfied with the progress. But one mental tip that you could try actually is something that has been working for me really well, is stopping just before you feel satisfied, because that keeps, and the reason why is that it keeps the hunger and the dissatisfaction loud, meaning that you actually have more motivation to get the job done next time and do more of that work. Because then the time between when you stop and the next time you start the actual work that you were doing before to finish it, the expectation of what you need to do kind of grows. And that is a skill that you can actually exploit for you to get crazy results and do a lot more work in a shorter period of time. So it's just 20 hours. That's it, right? It's just 20 hours. The more you practice, the more you learn.